Glory to Ukraine. Today we have a very special guest and an important topic to discuss. As Ukraine stands at the crossroads of challenges and opportunities, the support and perspectives of our international partners remain vital. We are honored to have with us today the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Margus Tsahkna, to share insights into the strong ties between our countries and the shared vision for a peaceful, secure and prosperous future. Good evening, Mr. Tsahkna, and thank you for joining us and thank you for supporting Ukraine.
Good evening, and thank you for receiving us, and thank you for the opportunity to explain what we are thinking, and you can count on us for Estonian people.
Thank you so much. So, Mr. Tsahkna, on the press conference, our minister said that there is no pressure on Ukraine from its partners regarding quick peace agreements in the war with Russia. A quote, everyone says that we need to find peace at any cost, but if you compare the situation in Europe now to 3 years ago, you will see that the understanding is different now. Everyone understands that Ukraine is for lasting peace, and undoubtedly everyone wants peace. But everyone also understands that if we only have a ceasefire, if we just have more Minsk agreements, there will be no peace. How do you propose to achieve a sustainable resolution instead of relying on a ceasefire?
You're right. I think that the attitude in Europe has changed a lot during the last 3 years. And be honest, and Ukrainian people understand it very well, that actually the aggression from Russia started already 2014. So Ukraine is at war already more than 10 years, not 3 years. But Estonia has been very strongly advocating already before 2008 when Russia invaded Georgia. We remember that as well, that we need to have a solid response. We need to act very decisively because Putin understands only the strong language. But unfortunately, we were not very well understood. But now I think that most of European countries, they understand that Russia is a threat for them as well and will remain a threat. And also these agreements which made in Minsk, they didn't actually work. They were not covered with this real security guarantees, and also the grey areas or the neutralities, cross-bordering of Russia. It's just a green light for Putin to commit the aggression. So this understanding has changed in Europe, I can assure you as well. But at the same time, I think that Ukrainians and everybody wants to have a peace, of course. Nobody wants to be at war. But I can say very, very, very clearly as well that nobody expected in the beginning of 22 that Ukraine people were able to fight back like 3 years, as you have done now. And this is something that everybody believes now, that we can actually beat Putin. But politically, I see many, many leaders as well to think that maybe the good old times, the old, so-called old business times, they will come back, but they never come back again. So the peace is there, the willingness of peace is there, but it cannot be without Ukraine, of course, without Europe, but it must be just peace and also long-lasting peace. And long-lasting peace needs as well the solid security guarantees, and from Estonian perspective, it can be only NATO full membership.
According to Mike Waltz, US President-elect Donald Trump's future national security advisor, Trump may soon speak with Russian terrorist, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, but preparations for their possible meeting are still underway. ABC News reports. In your opinion, and also do you consider such context appropriate? What preparation are being made for the potential meeting between Donald Trump and Russian dictator, Russian terrorist Vladimir Putin?
It is obvious that Putin is afraid of Trump, and Putin is afraid of NATO as well. And even he plays like the strong game in the meaning of the international politics and relations. The case is that he has not changed the goal, and the goal was not only to gain some more territories. The goal was totally different, not only as well to destroy Ukraine and Ukraine nation, but also to destroy all the rules and order what we have agreed amongst democratic countries in the world. So the problem is that the meeting with Putin is a dangerous path. And I know that President Trump knows it very well. So if you have seen as well the President Trump's and his administration rhetorics during the last 1 month, it has been very disciplined in the meaning of topic of Ukraine and Russia, because he understands as well that it can be a trap just to meet. But of course, if President Trump will meet Putin, he needs to have a very strong position. It's the one thing. The second thing is that it is impossible to talk about Ukraine without Ukraine. This is very obvious. And also we can be very straightforward as well that it is hard to talk about peace in Europe without Europe. So we need to have Ukraine and also Europe as well, Trump, in a very strong position to talk with Putin. So let's see when it happens.
Which strong position?
We're talking about, of course, the military level. We're talking about the battlefield. We're talking about the political level. We're talking about economical level. We're talking about as well the security guarantees for Ukraine. But it is not only about Ukraine. If Estonia is talking about the NATO membership, it's about us as well. It's about the European security architecture we create. So we need to talk about these things all together. We need to talk with a unique voice, united voice. So, but let's see, President Trump will enter the White House pretty soon.
We will see. And also we'll talk about NATO membership a little bit later, but we now see that the US is asking Europe to seize $300 billion in frozen Russian assets to bring Putin to the negotiating table, but Europe opposes it, reported by CNN. How could seizing $300 billion in frozen Russian assets influence the negotiations with the president, dictator Vladimir Putin?
Estonia started to talk about Russian frozen assets and the use of Russian frozen assets already more than 2 years ago. And I remember that we were pretty alone at this stage. Nobody believed, nobody wanted to talk about that. But for now, we are already using the profits, which has been taken from the frozen assets. And we are using them, and they have delivered to Ukraine already last year. And also they are guaranteeing the loan, $50 billion worth loan, which has been given to Ukraine already. So it was a first step. But the real part of the frozen assets, more than 300 billion euros, they are in Europe. And we are advocating heavily that we are going to use them. And I think that Putin is afraid of that, really, because these are the assets, if we take them, based on the principle that aggressor must pay. Then he's going to lose a lot, and of course, Ukraine will gain a lot. But I believe in that principle, and more European countries, they are supporting that. So I do hope that pretty soon we will see this kind of decision to use the real part of the Russian frozen assets. And so I totally agree with President Trump or US administration that to push as well the European countries to use it. And I do hope that it will happen.
Hope. And also about sanctions, because Gazprom has been added to the US Department of the Treasury sanctions list following a new wave of sanctions imposed on Russian companies operating abroad by President Joe Biden as part of his ongoing efforts to target Russia's key revenue sources. President Biden implemented sanctions that now affect Gazprom's operations in Kazakhstan, along with over 30 Russian oil field service companies. In addition to its presence in Kazakhstan, the company's operation in Tajikistan, Serbia, and Luxembourg are also included in the sanctions. How and what will it affect in the future?
We need to tighten the sanctions against Russia, and we need to cooperate with US. European Union has delivered already 15 packages of sanctions, and the next package is pretty well prepared. But we have as well this shadow fleet, you know, the Russian ships which are hidden under the different flags, and actually, you know, they are dealing with energy, oil, gas, and everything else. So we have a long way to go, but I do believe that we can sanction Russian economy more and on these strategic positions more and more. But still, there are different countries which are supporting Russia economically. And I do hope as well that the new President Trump will deal with that as well, together with the European Union. But still, with European Union, there are less trade, more than 60%, than it was like before the active war. So we have sanctioned a lot, but there are some loops still existing.
About NATO, we know that Estonia has a very clear position. The best working guarantee, not only for Ukraine, but for Europe, is NATO membership. And you said it is in our interest for Ukraine to become a full member of NATO because neutrality is a green light for Putin, as you said.
Exactly.
In our interview. So what are the main reasons Ukraine has not been guaranteed NATO membership yet? Are there political or military obstacles preventing Ukraine from joining NATO? How does Estonia plan to further support Ukraine in its efforts to integrate with European Union and NATO?
I think that Ukraine has done a lot about reforms and preparing them to join European Union. And I do hope that pretty soon we will open the first and the second chapter for negotiations, and no one is questioning about that. Sorry. But about NATO membership, it needs the consensus amongst 32 countries. And even for Sweden, it took more than a year to become the full member of NATO. So this is a political decision. But we need to understand as well that Ukraine is in the middle of the active war. And to become like overnight a full member of NATO, it means that as well that all NATO will be involved in this active war. But what we are talking about the working security guarantees. We are not talking about the Budapest agreement or the Minsk I, Minsk II agreement, but we need a real working military security guarantees. And the full membership of NATO is the most efficient and the only fully long-term working security guarantee. And it is not only about Ukraine, as you mentioned as well, it's about Europe, because the war is in Europe. And we, as a bordering country of Russia as well, more than 20 years already in NATO, we know exactly what does it mean. And of course, in the future, Ukraine will be the country with one of the most largest military power, as well stabilizing our situation in our region. So this kind of two-way approach is something what we see in the future. And that's why we are advocating for the full membership of NATO. It is hard to get right now, but it cannot be taken down from the table at all. So we need to continue, convince our allies. But first, we need to focus on how can we win the war together. How can Putin lose the war? And the main problem, I think, in the western part of the world is the fear. What happens if Putin will lose the war? I remember that as well when there was a fear about the collapse of Soviet Union, the end of 80s and the beginning of 90s. What will happen if the Soviet Union will collapse? But many good things happened. So we need to convince our allies. We need to show as well that we are together in that and that we are secure in the future. And that's why we are saying very clearly that NATO membership is the most efficient and working security guarantee for Europe together with Ukraine.
You said that Europe should be ready to send military forces to Ukraine to support a possible peace deal between Kiev and Moscow if Donald Trump proposes one. For example, the Lithuanian foreign minister announced his readiness to send troops to Ukraine at the request of the Ukrainian side. This issue will be discussed with the allies after an official request from Ukraine. What about Estonia? And also, what about NATO in general in this question?
It will be very interesting, a very important discussion, because probably there will be transmission period in the meaning before the full membership of NATO. And but what will be these real working security guarantees for Ukraine if there will be a just and long-lasting peace agreement? These security guarantees must be a part of them. So, and I'm very clear that Europe must play a role here. On technical level, it will be some kind of mission or some kind of troops here? I don't know exactly. It's about the discussions. But we need to understand that there cannot be a just and long-lasting peace without working security guarantees. So, and this discussion will become on the table earlier than sooner.
Meanwhile, Putin is being helped by North Korea with troops. You emphasized that North Korean troops, hundreds of kilometers away from NATO's borders, are changing a lot. This changes the global perspective in the US, Europe, and in the global south. How does the involvement of North Korea alter the perception of Russian aggression on the global stage?
The first thing that actually North Korea has been supporting Russia a lot with ammunition, with equipment, and so on. But it shows as well the weakness of Putin. Actually, he's running out of resources. And about troops, bringing them to Europe, I think that it was a strategic mistake in the meaning of showing that this is not the Ukraine problem with Russia. This is a global thing. Because if you bring, first time ever, the North Korean active troops to Europe, just a couple of hundreds of kilometers from the NATO and EU border, it changes the core of this conflict and of this aggression. So even the figures, they are not very big if you see the troops on the ground. But as a fact that North Korea is fighting officially based on the bilateral agreement between North Korea and Russia in Europe, and it can be as well the beginning. So it has paid lots of attention from US and in Europe as well, that this is a change of the core of this conflict. So I think that Putin made a mistake, and also the attitude and the understanding of this Russian aggression is not that this is something between Russia and Ukraine. This is much more global. It's all connected. So it has changed the understanding of this conflict.
What do you think about a reaction by South Korea? Because we don't see what we want.
The South Korea is definitely concerned about the North Korean involvement, because North Korea has been isolated a lot. But now, for North Korean perspective, it was a good move. Now they are a global player, we can say like this. And of course, South Korea must be ready and prepared for the invasion from the North Korea. It's like historically like that, and the danger is still there. And also the region, Japan and all the other democratic countries, they are very deeply concerned about North Korea and this kind of cooperation between North Korea and Russia. And also, let's be honest, China is playing a huge role in the region as well. So I think that they have the main reason to focus on their regional security as well. But of course, I've said as well, our South Korean colleagues, that they have an opportunity to support Ukraine more.
Now I want to talk about the head of the Christian Democratic Union and candidate for the German chancellorship from the opposition, CSU bloc, Friedrich Merz, proposed that the government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz issue an ultimatum to Russia to stop bombing civilian infrastructure in Ukraine, and in case of Russia's failure to comply with it, to transfer long-range terrorist missiles to Kiev. Why can't the civilized world speak to Putin in the language of ultimatums? Why can't Putin threaten, manipulate, and kill people in Ukraine, and not only while everyone just watches?
I'm not going to comment, the German domestic policy, because they are in the middle of the campaign. They will have elections on 23rd of February, so I don't want to be there. But I can assure you that actually Germany has given a lot of support to Ukraine, nominally the second donor amongst and after the US. There's a focus about Taurus question. So I don't know militarily it's given a lot or not, but this is a German's decision. But about fear. The fear is there, and it's a fear about and against escalation. There is a thinking in the western part of the world and the fear of nuclear escalation. I can say, as a foreign minister of Estonia, we don't believe that this escalation will come, because the situation has already escalated. We have full-scale war with all these atrocities. We have deported children. We have civil hostages. We have, I don't have to explain here in Ukraine what we already have. This is the escalation in real life. And I don't believe that Putin will use in real life the nuclear weapon, because then he's going to lose everything on international level. But the fear of this escalation is there. And Putin is using very well this kind of fear. And this fear is coming from the Cold War times. We believe that we need to support Ukraine, because you are fighting not only for yourself and not only for us, but in Estonia we say that you are fighting instead of us. When I was defense minister of Estonia in 2016 and 17, we saw 120,000 troops the other side of our border in Russia, ready to go within 48 hours. They are not existing anymore. They were sent to Ukraine and they're done. So we say that you are fighting instead of us. So Putin is very good on playing with these fears, but we need to understand that there is no place for fear. We need to just win the war together with you.
About another fear, Trump's victory in the US election has raised fears that he could impose a deal on Ukraine that favors Moscow by threatening to cut off US military aid. This has accelerated discussions among Ukrainians' European allies about ways to support the country in the face of a possible change in Washington's position. How are Ukrainians' European allies responding to the possibility of a shift in US supporting under Trump's leadership? In what ways are the European countries preparing to increase their support for Ukraine in case of change in US foreign policy?
We have increased our support, and as one example is Estonia. We have agreed for the next 4 years the long-lasting military support. It is 0.25% of our GDP. It's a lot, we can say. And we just wanted to assure Ukraine that it is not like a case-by-case support, but it's like the support Ukraine can rely on. And many other countries, they have done the same. But we don't need to speculate exactly what will happen if President Trump is entering to White House. It will happen soon, and we will see. But what we have done, we have put arguments on the table and convinced as well President Trump and his administration what are the risks and what are the costs and what will be the most efficient ways to finish this aggression from the Russian side. And the main thing is to change the goal of Putin. And it needs as well investments and long-lasting support on military level, economical level, financial level. And I do hope that it will remain. But of course, Europe must pay more, not only supporting Ukraine, but also invest to our own defense capabilities. It's there. Estonia is putting 3.4% of GDP, and on top of that, we deliver the next 3 years as well this kind of deep strike capabilities to fulfill the NATO regional defense plans. So we increased taxes for Estonian people and economy this year. So we pay a lot. And as well Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and the bordering countries. But all the others, they need to understand as well that 2% of GDP, as NATO was this kind of goal, it's not enough anymore. We need to increase that. So we definitely need to pay more, and we need to constantly support Ukraine. US has been very vocal, not only from Trump's side, but also many previous presidents. They have said that Europe must increase the spendings for defense. And unfortunately, it has not been happening so quickly as we wanted to have, but it goes better and better. But I think that for the next NATO summit in The Hague this summer, at least the minimum level must be 2.5% for everybody, minimum, maybe even 3%. So, but the understanding is there in Europe as well that we need to pay more, we need to invest more, and we need to study from Ukraine, actually, the new level of how to protect your country on military level in the meaning. So the understanding is there, and I think that GDP figure is honest thing, because it shows the burden for your society and economy. So Estonia pays close to 4%. Poland is paying 4.2%, and this year even more. Mm-hmm. We have pensioners, we have education system, we have social system, so on. But we are able to do it because we know that we need to invest. And all the same understanding must be amongst the other allies as well. And I think that we are on the way to that.
And all Ukrainians really thank you and Estonia people for this support and for help to our country. And if we're talking about the sabotage incidents occurring in Europe in recent months are not isolated cases, but part of a system of coordinated actions to destabilize the Europe infrastructure. Deutsche Welle reports, hitting Kaja Kallas. How is Moscow allegedly involved in destabilizing the Europeans' infrastructure through these sabotage incidents?
It's true that we have many, I can say like tens and tens of different hybrid attacks amongst Europe, not only in Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, but also in Germany, Great Britain, everywhere. And they are guided and they are financed and coordinated from Russia. So Russia is using this kind of hybrid attacks, just pushing the red lines, changing our attitudes in our societies. And as well, during the last 2 years, we have this, we call incidents, but actually attacks against undersea infrastructures. The gas pipelines, the community cables, and so on. And the latest was between Estonia and Finland just during the Christmas. So, but I think that it was like the wake-up call as well for all the NATO members and also the Baltic Sea regional countries that we need to act more precisely. And we just had our prime minister's meeting in Helsinki. So we are acting more actively, and also we see more NATO in Baltic Sea. But you are totally right. Russia is actually waging already these kind of attacks. Whenever we call them like the hybrid or not, this is aggression against Europe on different level. As well, we are witnessing as a digitalized country, Estonia is 24/7 the hybrid attacks from Russia. So this is already normality, but we cannot just accept that. So Russia is an aggressive country. And as a proof that the change of mentality has happened in Europe as well, is that the Finland joined the NATO, but Sweden, after more than 200 years of neutrality, Swedish people decided to join NATO because they feel the threat from Russia. So this is a big change.
We know that NATO member states have decided to enhance the bloc's military presence in the Baltic Sea. The decision was made to protect critical infrastructure following recent damage to underwater cables connecting Estonia and Finland, reports the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO. What can you say about these facts? What do you know?
I know a lot, but I cannot go to details, of course. But the case is that we increased the participation on the Baltic Sea in our region of NATO. And of course, we need to deal as well the maritime law, because the Gulf of Finland, the Finnish Gulf, the shadow fleet is heavily used. We're talking about like more than 500 different ships and tankers per week, which are passing the very narrow territory between Estonia and Finland. So we need to control it. We need to be ready to act, and it's harder by law than actually we normally think. But I think that Russia has some kind of broken the angle in the meaning, or how to say that it has been like the wake-up call as well, that this kind of international agreements, they're not working from the Russian side. So we need to be more active and more in the meaning decisive. But the good thing is that the Baltic Sea is now the NATO lake, because Finland and Sweden, they joined as well NATO. So we have more capabilities to protect our undersea infrastructure.
Russia may try to seize a part of Estonia. The city of Narva, located between Estonia and Russia, could become the place where World War III begins, Political reports. What are the potential consequences for Estonia if Russia tries to seize Narva or other parts of its territory? Is this even possible?
Right now, we don't see this kind of military capabilities, the other side of the border, because they were sent to Ukraine and you dealt with them. But of course, in the future, Russia will remain the threat for all the Europe. But Estonia is a full member of NATO. We have working defense plans, regional defense plans. We renewed them last year in Vilnius summit, or even year before. And it means the concept that we are not giving a millimeter of NATO territory, as well as Estonian territory. So we are ready to fight back from the very first second. So I think that Russia, maybe theoretically, may test the NATO capabilities, but there will be a solid and very quick response for that, with all the capabilities.
About Russian attack, we can remember that on the morning of March 24th, during another attack on Ukraine, a Russian missile entered the Polish airspace. It remained over NATO territory for 39 seconds. In Warsaw, it was stated that the missile's movement was tracked and there was communication with the Ukrainian military. It was not intercepted because it did not pose a threat to Poland. A Russian missile enters NATO territory. We understand a missile that could cause many deaths and destruction. Don't you find it strange that the decision was made not to shoot it down? Because Putin sees that there is no response. He understands that he can do whatever he wants.
I'm not going to comment this precise incident, and however we call it, but we were aware that it happened, and it was a decision of Poland not to shoot it down, but NATO was informed as well. But you are pointing the right problem, because maybe it was not planned, this rocket just happened to be there. Or maybe it was. We don't know exactly finally. But maybe it was just a small test what will happen. So we must take it very seriously. And it was not only the one incident. We have had the drones going to Romania. We have had this kind of, we call incidents. But NATO is very decisive and a very big organization and very powerful organization. So we need to think before we act as well. But it doesn't mean that we are not protecting our territories. So we were aware, we were following, but you asking the right question, because our people asking the same question. How can we be sure that what is one incident or the other incident? So, but it was maybe a good lesson as well.
We hope to see a right reaction by NATO's country. And also, Mr. Tsahna, I thank you for this important, interesting conversation. Thanks to Estonia for supporting Ukraine and Ukrainian people. The Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia, Margus Tsahna, was with us today. So we need to say to our audience, share this interview and see you soon. Thank you. And we're waiting for you in Ukraine next time.
Thank you very much. And I can say you that you can rely on Estonian people for a long, long term. And you are fighting instead of us and for us as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.